let's proceed as to the sentencing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to allow Sade Robinson's family to start off the sentencing by speaking. There are 3 members of her family that would like to speak. First, it will be Adriana Reams, her sister.
Thank you. And I did read her letter in preparation for today as well. Good morning, Ms. Reams. In order to begin, would you please state your first and last name and spell both for the record?
Adriana Reams, ADriannaReams.
Ms. Reams, what would you like to say?
When Maxwell Anderson murdered my sister, he redefined my definition of misfortune. No amount of financial hardships, disputes, or everyday struggles were even in the same realm as the effect of the loss he created. He made it,
And try to go slow, okay?
He made it to where my grandfather, who had just gotten diagnosed with cancer, lost his will to live his already health-threatened life. He was mentally sick and constantly bedridden. He could not even garden, which is a core part of his life that I have seen him do every year that I have been alive. He made me witness my hypersensitive grandmother on the verge of heart attack several times. Breaking down from the combination of the grief, other people's emotions, and the stress of having to deal with all the tedious responsibilities that he left behind when he ended my sister's life. He stole my father's ability to see the work he put in to raise Sade for 18 years pay off by having more than a year of seeing her be a happy, successful adult who still loved and appreciated him. He stole her father's ability to repair his relationship with her and be as close as they once were. He stole my mother's chance to ever finally become the mother that Sade always deserved. But most importantly, he stole Sade's chance to be an adult, to choose who she would and would not let into her life, to prioritize herself for the first time and do what makes her happy. As a result of his actions, I have had to grow up way faster than a 16-year-old should have to. I had to communicate with law enforcement, take care of my family, physically pick my mother up off of the ground, on top of trying to deal with my own loss, because he left them all too weak and broken to do anything. I had to quit my job because Sade got me that job, and the whole time I was there, I worked with her. I saw the effect she had on people, the way everyone lit up from her presence, the way she made everyone, from customers to coworkers feel special, which meant that I had to watch all of that go away. I had to watch and hear time and time again all of the people, many of whom I've never heard of, who were deeply pained by the loss of Sade because of what she meant to them, because of the way that she changed people's lives and generated happiness and erased people's bad days with her smile or her laugh or her hugs or her compliments or her taking things off of other people's plates regardless of how full her own was. I could not continue to be surrounded by people who hurt the same way I did because of the huge impact she had on them regardless of the extent of their interactions. I could not be in places where I could easily for me, as she always did when I had not yet found my own voice. I couldn't go back to a job where I could no longer be getting to spend time with her, whether it was through car rides, shifts together, or sleeping over at her apartment because she always wanted to take care of me. He made it to where I couldn't go to school without people giving me looks of pity or no longer knowing how to interact with me because neither them or I knew what to say, for there was nothing you could say for what he did. He made it to where I cannot ride my bike without random but kind strangers stopping me because they feel the need to pray for me and my family despite not knowing us. He made it to where I cannot trust anyone, not just emotionally, but I cannot meet any person without the fear that they're gonna harm or kill me. Because all my sister did was meet someone, and as a result, he ended her life. He stole my ability to feel momentary happiness without feeling guilty for enjoying my life when I know Sade will never get to enjoy hers. He made it to where I cannot let myself stop doing things because I know that if I have time and space to think, I will break down and I will not be able to start again. He made me miss school and sports and a number of other things because I was searching for my sister's body that he unremorsefully hid from us, knowing that it would cause us extra pain. He made me feel extra anger for the fact that he could be so ruthless and relegate my sister, who took years to build up the confidence to feel like something, back to nothing. He makes me feel extra anger because he still shows no regret and sits here looking stupid without an ounce of guilt for what he did. He stole my sanity because I will spend the rest of my life searching for answers that I'll never get about what he did to my sister and why he did it. Because even though he has no life ahead of him, he still refuses to tell us these answers, even though doing so no longer has any ability to hurt him. He stole my resolve when he and his lawyer sat here and tried to paint my sister as some dirty, irresponsible drug addict or dealer, which could not be further from the truth. A couple of months ago, one of Sade's old teachers gave me a letter that she wrote to me for a school assignment when she was 15. She talked about some of her hardships, and she had so many, which is why it is especially hard to know that as soon as her hard work allowed her to escape many of them, her life was stolen. She said that she wants to be my role model and show me that anything is possible, that she wants to guide me through everything and be my support system. She said that even 5 years ago, she wanted to inspire me to be as independent as she was, and that she hopes she inspires me to do what I want to do in life. She said that everything she does is for me, and she will do anything for me. Even in her 19 years, she was still incredibly hardworking, independent, kind, supportive, selfless, resilient, and special. She continues to inspire me for the fighter that she was, but he took the guide and support system and role model that she was going to be for the rest of my life. He stole my big sister that always protected me and nurtured me and put me first. And he robbed her of her ability to do that and feel accomplished because she knew she was setting me up for a life better than the one she was forced to struggle through. He made it to where I cannot read that letter that I should have always cherished and smiled about without crying, because now it is just a reminder of everything I no longer have. He made it to where I cannot speak about her without breaking down or think about her without shaking, to where I cannot even grasp or understand my emotions because they are so overwhelming that I have to be numb to them. He made it to where holidays are no longer a celebration, but a mourning. He robbed my future kids of the opportunity to have cousins and an aunt to love and support them. And I will never not be haunted and affected by all that he took from me, but what hurts 10 times more is all that he took from her. Sade deserved to be selfish and irresponsible. She was working from the time she was 14 because she did not have anyone she could comfortably rely on, and she felt the need to be self-sufficient. People only ever took from her. They took advantage of her because they knew how kind and generous of a person she was. As she grew, she began to stand up for herself, but she never stopped showing people grace, never let one or a few bad people ruin her open-mindedness and magnanimousness for everyone she met. As she became more comfortable after saving up hard-earned checks and tips for years and buying her own car and apartment without any help from anyone, she began to dream bigger. She was able to think about more than just getting by and develop career aspirations while remaining responsible and paying all her bills months in advance, and still affording to finally enjoy the little free time that she had. Whether it was saving up for big vacations where she could go meet new people and experience new cultures as a social butterfly that she was, or taking a little breather and going out on one of her rare nights off between being a full-time college student on top of working over 60 hours a week between 2 jobs. She had every right to, and no matter what picture anyone paints, she was always responsible when she did. Her independence was finally allowed, and she was finally beginning to be happy. He ended it as soon as it started. He made it so she went through 19 years of hardships and abuse, and then after working hard to escape it, had no life left to be able to enjoy it. No chance to learn from whatever normal minor mistake she made as any 19-year-old does. All she wanted was to be cared for and praised and appreciated, the way she had always done for everyone else, and he instead took her ability to do anything. She was the definition of a fighter, the definition of resilience. She never laid down or backed down, and to know that he took all her power away and stole her ability to fight for herself is the worst thing imaginable. There is nothing that can justify what he did to her, and what he did was much more than just murder or dismember her. He erased her independence, her ability to fight for herself. He tried to erase her existence and her value. Now I no longer have the opportunity to try and give her everything she gave me. I cannot show her how proud of her I am or how much I looked up to her. But much worse than me, she can no longer make herself proud or make herself anything. And the only one who took that from her is the man sitting right there. I beg you to not let this man have any type of parole. You heard his ex-girlfriend describe the psychological abuse and self-harm he tried to impose on her. His behavior is clearly a pattern, and there is no way that after he has demonstrated the extent of what he is willing to do to a person so casually, he should ever walk these streets again. He still refuses to even admit what he did, and the jury and the public did not even have to be there to unanimously know what he did. He is clearly a danger to the public and should never be given another chance to cause anyone such tremendous harm the way he has done to my family. These law enforcement officers and prosecutors worked countless days working to find the truth. You, us, and the jury sat here for 2 weeks hearing all the heinous things he committed. Do not let any of that go to waste. Do not let the loss of Sade go to waste. This man should never walk free again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reams. You spoke well on behalf of your sister.
Speaking next will be Sade's mother, Sheena Scarborough.
First off, Your Honor, I would like to start off with, my name is Sheena Scarborough, SHEENA,
Thank you. Would somebody move that Elmo to the side, please? Ms. Scarborough, what would you like to say?
I am the mother of Sade. I've raised my daughters. We are light worker people. We are very angelic individuals. For us to even be here, I'm going to have to ask. I wanted to go before my daughter because I need her to be protected by this heavy demonic energy that is residual in this courtroom, this devil and his entire demonic family in this courtroom. It's very heavy to where I can't even talk. But Your Honor, I am asking that everyone in this courtroom be protected through the white light by this devil that sits beside. My daughter referred to you as a man. You will never be a fucking man. You're a pussy-ass bitch.
Ms. Scarborough, if you could direct your comments to me, please.
Yes, Your Honor. First off, Your Honor, I would like to thank you and the entire team for what we all had to endure, which was it was freaking torture to even have to be dragged through what we were dragged through. This demon and his whole ass attorney, they knew exactly what he did and what he was responsible for. They took us through extreme agony and pain. We are already dealing with so much trauma. There's no such thing as justice with what you did to my daughter and what you have done to my family. I have bust my ass for over 20 years to raise the best possible angelic light worker kids that do nothing but good. My daughter had to cross your demonic path. You plotted and planned to kill, dismember, then you disrespectfully spread my daughter across the Milwaukee like a piece of trash. How dare you? My daughter was everything. She was everything to all of us. As my baby explained, she had a different impact in each and every one of our lives. There's so many strangers and individuals in the community that I have engaged and met that she has touched and impacted. This has affected the world, the community in such extreme ways. There's no way in hell we should have even ever went through this freaking trial that you drug us through. You knew you were guilty. You're negligent, mammy and pappy. Them demons, I'll deal with them later. But I want you to know that you can no longer hurt my baby. She's in heaven. She's protected. We roll deep. My ancestors roll deep. When you touch my daughter, you fuck with the wrong family. We ain't no pussy bitches, and you should have never touched my daughter. My daughter helped everyone. She fed homeless, she worked 2 jobs, everything Adriana said. The community knows who my daughter was. Everybody knows who my daughter was. How dare y'all even pull that whole shit about that meth? You will not drag my daughter's name down, trying to plot and set up stuff. You gonna carry my daughter's name the correct way in her legacy. You and your family will be held fully responsible for the rest of your life. You will be eternally haunted by myself, my ancestors. I know you cannot sleep at night. They have already been at you. You will never get peace. You will never sleep. You no longer can harm and hurt my innocent baby. You took advantage of her. You manipulated her in the worst possible way. You're a coward. My daughter is a hero. My daughter is a hero. She has saved so many other women from this demonic serial killer that there's no telling how many more people that he has killed. If you had any type of decency, but you are a devil, if you had any type of core piece of anything left in your demonic soul, or if your parents, your devil parents had any type of respect, I don't even know how they could sleep at night, knowing what type of demon son they raised, and then tried to cover it up.
This pissed off a lot of Americans. Let me tell you why. Did you know that if you're an American and you're at least 50
damn sense, all y'all karma is gonna be a bitch. And I'm getting each and every one of you eternally. I'm getting the whole entire family tree. Know that. Your sister, all them, each member of your family tree will be eternally hunted by my ancestors. We're light workers. I don't even have to touch you. The spiritual realm already been at you. I can see it in your eyes. You can't even sleep at night, you hoe ass. Judge, I did want to thank you and the entire community, the officers, the team, Ian, Donner, this whole entire community and team has stood 10 toes behind us. This has been extremely traumatic. This is not even my character. I don't move like this. I've been advocating and helping others my entire life. I come from a mental health background. This was not supposed to happen. This was not a part of our plan. Me and my daughters had goals. They are both very academically gifted and talented. They are overachievers. For this to happen, and we have bust and worked our behinds off in life, and then to have all of this noise about the millionaire murderer's son comes and takes my daughter. I don't give a freak about what your color status or how much money you got. You ducked with the wrong family. Because I don't play. You thought you was going to get away. But I'm going to respectfully request that you confess where the rest of my daughter's crown is, if you have any respect left for me and her father and her sister and the rest of my family in this community. You've already done the worst. You can at least give us that much. You have messed the entire community up. People can't even take walks and go to the park, and everybody's in trauma. This was not your first time doing this. And all your dark is going to come to the light. If you or your devil parents had any type of decency of respect as humans with morals, there's nothing else that there's no excuse for what you did to us, what you did to my daughter. My daughter is now protected. You can't hurt her. You can't take advantage of her. But know that you messed with the wrong one. You weren't getting away with this one. And you will be dealt with eternally, like I stated. But your Honor, Judge, I'm asking that this demon be respectfully returned back to hell as soon as possible. That's what I'm requesting through the court. Please return him back to hell as soon as possible. No possibility of life without parole, the maximum. And this devil should not be given any more special millionaire privileges being held in certain populations. He needs to be, not he, but that devil needs to be placed in a population with the rest of the demons that harm and hurt individuals, the murderers, the serial killers, the felons. You are not on no special privileges. Your money is not going to protect you. It's a done deal. Sade's justice is just now beginning, and you and all of your family will eternally pay for what you did to us.
Thank you, Ms. Scarborough.
Carlos Robinson, the father of Sade Robinson, will speak last.
My name is Carlos Robinson, CarlosRobinson.
Mr. Robinson, what would you like to say?
I've started my speech multiple times since the trial. My daughter was an amazing person. She lit up every room she walked into. She changed my life from her birth. Literally changed my life. She gave me a reason to think more of make me realize life is bigger than myself. We had an unbreakable bond, me and her. Talking to her was like talking to myself a lot of times. I used to tell her she was the innocent part of me. people lose their children. That's sometimes a part of life. I understand that. But to lose your child in this manner is unthinkable. No, I've tried therapy and all kind of treatments, and it's nobody can help me get through this process because everybody says nobody has ever been through this. What he has done is inconceivable. And to know that there's a chance I might not even have her completely to be able to put her at peace brings me night terrors and constant mental chaos. He has this. My daughter had a lot of life left to live. We talked a lot about her future. When she decided to come to live with me, and I got custody of her, I started to take her to colleges and things like that. And because before then she had no goals to go to college or anything like that. So I took her to like Howard University, FGCU, and she got the experience, and she started to change her perception of her goals and what she wanted to be and what she wanted to do. She had so much life left to live, so many goals that was taken from her. And to me, it's not just that she's not here, it's the way that she's not here. I can't wrap my mind around it. Somebody that does something like this doesn't even deserve. I think death is a way out. You deserve what you get. He deserves the punishment that he gave to my daughter. Everything that he did should be done to him. That's how I feel. To me, that's justice. I don't feel like he has a right to walk around and breathe air, eat breakfast, brush his teeth. He doesn't have that right. The moment he done what he did, he lost that. Any basic human rights. No man should be able to live doing what he did. That's just how I feel. And I try to make peace because I am a man of God, and I try to learn forgiveness. But I can't get past this. I can't.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, as the court is aware, there's three overarching things that the court must consider when sentencing an individual. The first would be the gravity, the seriousness of the offense. The court also has to consider the defendant's character, and the court has to consider the need to protect the public. The defendant was found guilty of 3 crimes. Count 1 carries with it a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. The only consideration as it comes to count 1 is whether or not the court makes Mr. Anderson eligible for extended supervision at some point after serving 20 years of initial confinement. The state's request and recommendation of the court today is to impose life imprisonment and not make the defendant eligible for extended supervision as it goes to count 1. As to count 2 and count 3, the state would be recommending the court impose the maximum sentences and run those consecutive to one another and consecutive to the life sentence on count 1. To begin with the seriousness of the offense, obviously the court was here for the jury trial. I want to just highlight what I think the most important things were as it relates to what considerations there are today at sentencing. On April 1st, 2024, Sade Robinson went to work at Pizza Shuttle like it was any other day. She had that job for a while. The day began like any other day. She left her apartment on Commerce Street, went to work, and then later on in the day was texting with the defendant, and they agreed to meet up after she got off work around 5 p.m. They went to Twisted Fisherman. They were there from shortly after 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And then they went to Duke's on Water, Sade driving them both in her Honda Civic, and they stayed there until about 9 p.m. They left Duke's on Water. They went to Maxwell Anderson's house at 3161 South 39th Street. Again, Sade Robinson driving her 2020 Honda Civic, and they remained in his house for several hours. And what we know is that while at his house, Sade became incapacitated. She was grabbed, groped, had her clothing removed, until she was removed from his house around 12:45 a.m. going into April 2nd. She was taken from the defendant's house by the defendant in her own car and driven around the county. And the defendant chose to ultimately go to what was his secret beach at Warnemont Park and dispose of Sade Robinson in the early morning hours of April 2nd. He took her body down to the shores of Lake Michigan. He cut her up into pieces and disposed of her in the lake, mostly in the lake. And then he took her car, left Warnemont Park, drove to the north side of Milwaukee, set her car on fire on 30th and Lisbon. In the course of doing that, in the course of disposing of her vehicle, he also discarded her left leg in the 31st and Galena playground, just a couple blocks away from where he set her car on fire. He calmly walked away and walked to a bus stop and returned home by a bus, Milwaukee County Transit bus, and then went about his life as if nothing happened. He went to work that day at Dugout 54. Later that night, April 2nd, Sade's right leg was found on the shores of Lake Michigan at Warnemont Park, and shortly after that, on the night of April 2nd, she was reported missing to police. For the next several days, as her family and friends wondered where she was, there were searches underway, and additional remains of hers were then recovered at the 31st and Galena playground. The police investigation allowed them to learn that the defendant was the last person she was with, the last person she communicated with, and he was ultimately arrested on April 4th. Days later, her torso was found badly decomposed, washed ashore in South Milwaukee. He had cut off both of her legs, cut off one of her arms, cut off one of her breasts, and cut off her head. Her head has never been recovered. As you can tell from what you've read in the letters and heard today, Sade was a completely innocent victim. She died alone in an unfamiliar place. Her last moments had to have been terrifying. And then after being killed, she was disgraced in the worst way imaginable, having her body cut into pieces, having her head cut off by the defendant who tried to make her disappear from the world. So when the court is looking at the seriousness of what Maxwell Anderson did, you have to consider who Sade was. She was a 19-year-old young woman, totally innocent. And as you've learned through the statements today, the PSI, hearing her friends and family testify, she was just getting into adulthood. She had just gotten that apartment on North Commerce. She had just bought that 2020 Honda Civic. It was a point of pride for her. It was it was a marker of adulthood, a marker of independence. She was ambitious. She had dreams. She wanted to succeed. She wanted to be productive. She went to school. She worked 2 jobs. And as you know, she was adored and loved by everybody, by all of those around her, her coworkers, her family, her friends, everybody. This is the most heinous crime this court will see. It doesn't get more serious than this, and it shows that the defendant has a depraved heart, and he has demonstrated a total lack of remorse, lack of accountability, and the gravity of this offense supports never letting him out of prison. When considering the defendant's character, we look at, for one, his criminal record. He has 6 prior criminal convictions. They are outlined in the pre-sentence report, and I think it's worth going through some of those, all of those, and the other conduct that's described in that report to get an idea of his character, and then to look at how that behavior was reflected in what he did to Sade. In 2014, he was convicted of a disorderly conduct, domestic violence incident. There was a read-in charge of disorderly conduct. This incident involved a domestic disturbance where he became violent during an argument with his mother. He damaged some property, pushed his mother, got into a physical altercation with his mother's fiance at the time, and it resulted in that person sustaining an injury, and Mr. Anderson himself sustained an injury during that. He was convicted, as I said, of disorderly conduct, and he was given a fine. In 2015, he was charged and convicted with another disorderly conduct, a domestic abuse crime, criminal damage to property, and misdemeanor witness intimidation, a domestic disturbance, this time with his grandparents, where he again became violent, threw things around, punched a hole in the wall, broke a phone. When his grandparents tried to call the police, and then he left. This time he was placed on probation and fined. He was discharged from probation. Fast forward to 2020, he was convicted of disorderly conduct. He had a dismissed and read-in count of misdemeanor battery. This incident involved the defendant beating up a man on Wisconsin Avenue when the man purportedly tried to intervene in an argument between the defendant and a female that the defendant was with. There was a video taken by a bystander that showed the defendant on top of the victim, hitting him with a closed fist in the head while the victim was on the ground trying to protect himself. Ultimately, again, he was convicted of disorderly conduct. He was placed on probation. He had previously picked up an OWI first offense, and then in 2022, he was convicted of OWI second offense after being pulled over going 70 and a 30 after 2 a.m. He was given a breath test and came back at a .145, and during this incident was also cited for disorderly conduct for urinating on the interview room that he was taken to by police after his arrest. There is a 2015 incident mentioned in the PSI, it's not a criminal conviction, it's just an operating without a license forfeiture. And then the PSI also brings about this 2010 incident where he was caught at what appears to be an underage drinking party, and after being detained became belligerent, vulgar with police, urinated in the police vehicle that he was put inside. Since being arrested for this case, he has been in the Milwaukee County Jail. There have been numerous instances of misconduct while in the jail. Some of those are talked about in the PSI as well. I was provided with approximately 21 incidents of disciplinary infractions during his time at the jail, usually involving verbal abuse to jail staff, name-calling, non-compliance with the rules. There was one incident of him defecating on himself during transport after one of the days of the jury trial, and another incident where he had apparently damaged some property, an electrical box, in the jail. Generally, his behavior while he's been in custody for this case at the jail, he's been a nuisance. What I think is important to take away from all of that is that this was not an isolated incident of violence. He has demonstrated in the past that he is capable of acting violent. But I think what speaks most to his character is the depravity of what he did in this case. I think all of that shows he has a violent, dangerous character and also supports this court not giving him an opportunity at extended supervision. As far as the need to protect the public, it simply couldn't be higher here. As I stated, this is the worst kind of crime there is, done in the worst way, leaving a family and a community shattered and distraught, and the public needs to be protected from this type of behavior, and life imprisonment guarantees that. This incident had, as this court is aware, a tremendously negative impact.
Turns out, if you've been in a car accident in the past year, they have to give you a huge check, and all you have to do is ask.
The community at large, on the public. The public was completely shaken by this. Members of our community, young women in particular, deserve to feel safe, deserve to feel like they can meet new people, go on a date, and not fear for their safety. And he took that sense of security away from countless people, and he does not care. The last thing I would highlight is the impact on the victim and the victim's family. Anytime there is a loss of life, it's going to have a tremendous negative impact on a family. But what happened to Sade Robinson was not just tragic, it was an unconscionably vicious act of violence that violated her dignity. He had her unconscious, was grabbing her, groping her, removing her clothing. He killed her. He then cut her body into pieces and sought to have her disappear. It was simply evil and heartless behavior. And anytime a child is lost, a family obviously is going to grieve and going to suffer. But in this instance, that loss of life was compounded by the brutality and the viciousness of what he did to her body after she was dead. And to add to that horrible reality of what they had to hear happen to her, they also have to live with the reality that her entire body has not been found. Her head, to this day, remains in an unknown location. And the fact that her head remains in an unknown location inhibits their ability to find peace, and it inhibits their ability to believe that Sade has found peace wherever her soul may be. And he's the cause of that. When you consider what her family went through, on top of losing a loved one, they had to deal with the agony, which was bolstered by the fact that they didn't know where she was missing, or what happened to her. And meanwhile, he's continuing on with his life as if nothing had happened. And all any parent or friend or family member would want to know in those moments is that their loved one is safe, or that they just want to know where they are. And it was and continues to be torturous to their family, to Sade's family, because they don't have that answer as to where all of her is, where her head is. And still to this day, there remain unknowns that will likely forever haunt them. And the family can't even say goodbye to her because part of her is still out there somewhere. And he's shown no remorse for what happened. He has not accepted responsibility for what occurred. And his failure to accept responsibility has further caused the victim's loved one pain and reinforces his heartless character, which we've already discussed and which the court must consider here today. Again, simply put, there is no more depraved of an offense that this court could see. The defendant murdered Sade, tried to rid the world of her being. It's the worst behavior any human can engage in. It shows he has no morals, no sense of dignity, no remorse, and there's only one sentence that is suitable for that kind of violent and evil behavior, and it's imprisonment for the rest of his life.
Thank you. Defense.
Thank you. We'd have Maxwell's father, Steve Anderson, start by making us saying a few words.
Sir, please start by stating your first and last name, spelling both for the record.
Stephen Anderson. STEVENANDERSON.
What would you like to say, sir?
Thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of myself and my family, I'd like to say a few things. First, to Sade's family, there are no words that I can share that will reduce your pain. You are all in my thoughts every single day. Although it is not the same, having lost a boy that was like a son to me 10 years ago, I have some sense of what you are feeling. It took me a very long time to get past the pain that I felt for the person that contributed to his passing. I'm not asking you to forgive anybody or anything. That is between you and your God. To the court, in particular, to Deputy Allen, to Judge Crivello, thank you for your compassion and all of your professionalism. To Max, we want you to know that we love you and support your plan for self-improvement. In this, we hope for a path for you to become a positive influence for society, both while you are incarcerated and hopefully after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. As you noted at the beginning, we filed much of our remarks in writing so that the court would have a clear picture of what we were asking for in this case. We do not make any claim that we know the magic number. What I would observe is, in terms of that recommendation, is this. When you set, first of all, the sentence in this case is a mandatory life sentence. The jury convicted him. That's required. One way or the other, whether he's granted the opportunity to be, and I use the word parole, obviously we understand that it means extended supervision. It's often used interchangeably, but we're referring to some future hope that Mr. Anderson would have the opportunity to be released from custody. And the point of that is that he will be supervised by the Department of Corrections for the rest of his life, no question about it. And he has been in custody now, obviously for over a year, in solitary confinement, which is about as horrible of a condition as a person could ever be confined in. There are basically the unit of the jail, the unit of the jail that he's in is one where there's mental health patients, there's people who are going through substance abuse withdrawals, and so it's a torturous way to exist. Obviously, there are very real safety concerns that Max has going off to prison. We've, I think, expressed some of that in our written submissions to the court, that is a real consideration, because at the end of the day, this is not mob justice in this country. People have the right to a trial. They have the right to the evidence to be presented, the right to be represented by lawyers, and the right to test that evidence, and the jury returned the verdict that it returned. And it's your job to determine the sentence. But I want to emphasize that whether you agree with our recommendation, the state's recommendation, or something in between, no matter what it looks like, Mr. Anderson is going to be saddled with this conviction and the supervision and the incarceration for the rest of his life. As he sits here, I struggle to wrap my mind around some of the case just like everybody else. We heard the evidence. We sat through the trial, and I certainly appreciate the state reciting it again today, but I don't think any of us have forgotten it. And as you read in the pre-sentence report, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but you read Mr. Anderson's version of events. He maintains that he didn't commit the crime. And you can place whatever weight on any sentencing factor you want, obviously, but that's his position. The jury reached a different verdict, and so for purposes of my presentation, I don't think it's wise or useful to parse through the testimony and point out what I think are points of reasonable doubt. The jury rejected that, and they returned the verdict that they returned. What I would say is that when you read through the character letters that were filed by Max's family, and I listened to the remarks from Sade's family as well, beautiful remarks by some of her family members, and the character letters were beautiful as well. But so were the ones on Mr. Anderson's side. Every person who has known Max throughout his life, every one of these character letters speaks to a history and a background that wouldn't suggest that something like this would happen. His mother describes how when she would come to visit him, he had adopted dogs, how they were well trained, how they were obedient, how he talked about wanting to work in a nonprofit center someday, his abilities as a chef, his work history, his imagination. And you go through the other letters that were submitted, his younger sister who had written a letter and talked about Max's intellectual talents and how he was a good student, how things came naturally to him, and how he was a good brother to her. A letter from the grandparents who were mentioned here as part of an earlier case, but his grandparents talking about their positive experiences with Max growing up. And that's the theme, I think, that exists here in all of the character letters when I read through them, that Max is, before he was taken into jail, before he was charged with these crimes, and before this incident took place, Max's character was generally positive. He's a high school graduate. After graduating high school, he went off to the Navy, served in the military for approximately 2 years. And I think there's obvious mental health issues in his background. I think that's clear. His mother talked about what she thinks was a traumatic brain injury that he suffered at 3 years old. There's a documented history of ADHD. And you read during his military service the mention that was made about the suicide attempt that happened in the Navy, where Max had tried to hang himself with an electrical cord. So clearly, there are mental health issues that deserve treatment, and we know that prison is not the best environment for a person to receive treatment for their mental health issues and their AODA needs. I disagree with the state that there's a long history of violence by Mr. Anderson. I think there are some isolated criminal convictions, but all those criminal convictions are misdemeanors. He has no felonies. And they are all of the disorderly conduct variation, even the one that the state mentioned about the incident on Wisconsin Avenue that was prosecuted here in Milwaukee, that was settled for disorderly conduct with probation. The incident with his mother, fine only, disorderly conduct. So that is not a significant prior record, and I think that differentiates Max from a lot of other people that come in front of this court. You do see people often in homicide court with gang ties, long histories of gun violence, long history of juvenile misbehavior, and you don't have any of that here. You have misdemeanors. There obviously are AODA needs. I think all of these cases, if you look at the disorderly conducts that he's had in his background, every one of them basically involves either mental health or substance abuse. And I think that's a recurring theme that we see here and even saw a little bit in the trial. The copious amounts of alcohol that was consumed on the night with Sade, I think further underscores that there are certainly AODA issues here. Max's plans for the future, they're, I would submit, incredibly realistic given the circumstances that he's in here. He has continued furthering his education as one of his goals, writing books, continuing to learn foreign languages. So I think he does have realistic plans. And obviously the punishment that's been inflicted sitting here in the county jail in solitary confinement has been horrific. Really, there's been almost no human interaction. He sits in a cell all day. His human interaction is when a PSI author comes to visit him or one of his attorneys comes to visit him, but not even being able to have visits from your family, not be able to see people in a face-to-face manner other than the guards is truly horrible. And of course, the fear that we have of him being targeted in prison, we know that because of some of the publicity that this case has generated, and I know it's not a matter that this court can specifically address, but we would ask that as part of the judgment of conviction in this case, the court expressed no objection to the Department of Corrections choosing to house Mr. Anderson as they see fit. I know it's up to the Department of Corrections, but it is an important consideration in this case that even people who have been convicted of very horrible crimes, we are not a death penalty state, we're not a mob justice state, nor are we that way in this country. And I would hope that the Department of Corrections takes measures to keep Mr. Anderson safe. The compass evaluation in this pre-sentence report is certainly not as bad as you often see. In fact, most of the, and that's an actuarial instrument that is done to evaluate a person by the probation department. And it's on pages 39 and 40 of the pre-sentence report. He is rated unlikely in numerous categories of having issues with society and routines, unlikely to have any leisure or recreation issues, unlikely to have thinking and attitude problems, unlikely to have negative personality traits, even unlikely to have anger issues. And so that's those are the actuarial tools that you've asked the Department of Corrections to use by drafting this report. They come back and conclude that these are not significant issues that need to be addressed at some point. There's not a socialization problem. There's not an educational problem. And we know that from his background. You learned a lot about Mr. Anderson during this trial. He has a long work history. He's been basically a pro-social person since he went off to the Navy. He's held a variety of jobs throughout Milwaukee. People have known him throughout the community. He's been a bartender. He's been a server. He's worked for an insurance company. He was maintaining a stable residence. He was maintaining his financial obligations. And so he's not the kind of person who comes to court with such hopelessness in terms of their ability to function in society that I think we should give the life sentence for. So my recommendation, as I indicate, is for parole eligibility at 25 years. That doesn't mean he gets released at that point. All that means is that at some future date, 25 years, when he has matured and grown, that a parole board will be able to evaluate his situation and decide whether or not he should have the opportunity to be released. That's all that means. Doesn't mean he gets out at that point. He may not even get out at 30 or 35 or 40. It would be entirely up to that agency to look at his growth and his behavior in prison. What has he done? What has he accomplished? And if they conclude that that would be appropriate, obviously the victim's family would be permitted to play a role in that process as well, and they would be able to decide whether or not to release him. we're asking you for that mercy today and that opportunity for some future release. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, what would you like to say?
I would like to start by saying that from the bottom of my heart, my deepest and most sincere condolences go out to Sade's family, as well as everyone else affected by this tragedy. That being said, Your Honor, I took this to trial without ever once trying to make a plea deal of any kind, because I did not commit these crimes. And so I plan to appeal my convictions, while I hope and pray that further investigations not only prove my innocence, but find and deliver true justice.
Anything else you wish to say?
No, ma'am.
So, relative to sentencing, I have a job. And what my job is to do is to hold you accountable. That's to punish you. It's to protect society. It's to find a way that you never come back here again, to rehabilitate you. And it's to deter others from engaging in like behavior. At the point of sentencing, I have to look at different factors. I have to look at your past record. And I'll agree with the defense that the prior record on its face is not as egregious as many cases I see in my courtroom. Quite often you see a background filled with felonies and violence. But what I said was on its face. When you look at the record as it's worked through in the pre-sentence investigation, I'll agree with the state that there are some red flags that jump out at you that show a level of violence that may have been a precursor. You know, when you look at the original case mentioned from Pewaukee from March of 2010, it looks like it's an underage drinking party. And when the officers come in, they find a bunch of people hiding, and they indicate they're about to do a search. And later there's people saying that they were being held in the home against their will. Kind of a weird comment to have on an underage drinking party. Ultimately, they find Mr. Anderson hiding behind an entertainment center. He's belligerent. He tells the police, "Fuck you, I hope you're proud to serve your country this way." He's then very coarse, and his comments are obscene. He then urinates in a police vehicle and calls a female police officer a cunt. Inappropriate. Then we have the 2014 case that involves the mother, where officers are dispatched to a location. They enter the home, they make contact with the mother. She indicates that her son was in the kitchen. Officers approach, and the response is, "What are you gonna do, shoot me?" And he runs out the door. He then jumps into his mother's vehicle and apparently steals the mother's vehicle and drives off. The mother indicates that when she returned home from work, he was acting strange. He was sweating profusely. He argued, he punched a vase, he caused it to fall to the floor. She calls her ex-husband. He pushes the mother into a room and shuts the door. He prevents her from exiting. He then breaks the phone. He's continuing to scream and yell and throw things, at which point she calls the police. Ultimately, what we find is that he returns to the residence. He gets into a physical altercation with Mr. Foos. She's informed that he had crashed her vehicle into the deck at the rear of the residence and fled on foot. Ultimately, we find that the mother's fiancé confronts Mr. Anderson, and he throws that person to the ground. He's able to get back in the house and to prevent Mr. Anderson from getting in. He suffered 3 to 4 broken ribs as a result of the altercation. Ultimately, they have to meet with Mr. Anderson at the hospital because it appears he suffered a broken collarbone. He's convicted ultimately of disorderly conduct because he says Mr. Foos pushed him down the stairs as he tried to gather his belongings. It's interesting when you see Mr. Anderson's comment about that because he just says that Mr. Foos just poked him. Sounds like a bit of a discrepancy there. Then we go on and we find the issue with the grandparents. And the grandparents call the police and they say that he needs someone to talk to about his mental health and that he's smashing a glass in the sink, causing it to break. He goes in the basement, he punches a hole in the wall. He breaks the other phones. They have to go to a landline at a neighbor's, ultimately to call the police. It just sounds like he is to some extent out of control. He's ultimately on probation. He's given conditions of no drinking. He's given conditions of having anger management counseling. He tells the agent other people probably deserve to do anger management. I don't. He then goes on and tests positive repeatedly. To look at his explanations are ridiculous. At one point, he claims that he accidentally grabbed someone else's Red Bull that had liquor in it when he wants, and he follows his own rules, not the rules imposed on him. And that's a frightening thing. You know, I read through the defendant's version of what happened, and it starts off by indicating that he was skeptical to meet with the pre-sentence investigator because he did not receive a fair trial, and there's no reason to believe that this writer's report would be fair or impartial. You know, speaking about the trial, you know, there's a constitutional right to a trial. Every person charged with a crime has a constitutional right to a trial, and we do not in any way penalize anyone for going to trial. It's also a constitutional right to be represented by counsel, and Attorney Cotton did his job, which is just his job to represent Mr. Anderson. That's under our Constitution, the rights that exist. Now, you get credit for taking responsibility. You get credit for resolving a case early. You get credit for stepping forward and saying, what I did was wrong. Because usually this first step in rehabilitation is taking of responsibility. And we didn't have that here. That's why it's important to read what his version is. So you heard him say today that he didn't commit this crime. What he said about the offense was that they met for food and drinks and they proceeded to his apartment, and that's pretty much all there is to say, he said. He offered no other information as to what transpired that night. He later said that he regretted he did not walk Miss Robinson to her vehicle when she left his apartment, and he believed it was at that point she was abducted by an unknown assailant, quote, either from the alley or from my backyard, unquote. When asked how he accounted for his presence in the area where Miss Robinson's vehicle was set on fire, Mr. Anderson said that he was set up. He stated he was in the area to buy marijuana, and quote, and all it would have taken was for someone to know where I lived and where I'd be in the morning, unquote. He would not tell the writer when or how he made the arrangements to purchase the marijuana, and then instead stated, quote, I plead the fifth. He then went on to point to things that he claimed were egregious errors at the trial. He claimed that there was a video that showed the photos on the phone and that the state only played stills of the video. That wasn't the evidence at trial. Am I correct? Yes. He claims that the still photo that showed his hand grasping Miss Robinson's breast was part of a video, and it was only a still that was shown. Incorrect, correct?
You're correct.
Okay. He indicated that at trial it was flaunted, the difference in age. And when I read that, I was somewhat shocked because I didn't really find that that was pointed out at all during trial. I mean, it was mentioned how old she was, but other than that, I didn't think that that was in any way an issue, and it barely even made it into my notes. So my point is, I thought it was interesting how his view of reality seems different from what I find truly transpired. And I found it at numerous points during the pre-sentence investigation. You know, looking through this pre-sentence investigation, his viewpoints were very inconsistent with the reality. You know, I think the first issue relative to the mother's fiance, that was credibility. You know, it sounds like he lied to law enforcement. You know, he's asked, have you ever been involved in mental health treatment? Have you ever been in a mental health facility? Have you ever received treatment? He responds in the negative, but then we have the mother indicating that he was in an outpatient at Rogers. He indicates that he never made a suicidal attempt or had an ideology of SAID. But then we read about in the Navy how he was dismissed from the Navy due to a medical release, which appears to be related to the suicidal attempt in trying to hang himself. You have him saying about school, I did okay, but then you look at the history of how he did in school, and his grades were pretty abysmal. And just odd things, like he talks about how he purchased the home himself for $160,000, but the mother says, no, I told the dad to buy him the home. It just seems like he has a different view of reality than the rest of the world does. So when I look at the criminal history, which I'm bound to do, it reflects low-level misdemeanors, but the facts underlying those low-level misdemeanors are replete with points that raise your concern. I next have to look at whether he has a history of undesirable behavior, and I think I've charted through what basically I found in the pre-sentence investigation. As to his personality, character, and social traits, it appears that he has had employment. That's a positive. It looks like he jumps between bartending jobs at numerous facilities. But who is a person who would do this crime? You know, what's the character underlying that? How can someone get to a point of inflicting such damage on a person, not only killing the person, but then dismembering, and then after that, discarding the body throughout the community? It's unconscionable, is where it comes down to. I did read the letters that were supplied on behalf of Mr. Anderson, and I do agree. They paint a picture of a man who helped his family when in need, who cared for animals, who went out of his way to love and support his family. But they love him, and that's clear. And that weighs on his behalf. You know, the fact that there are people out there that care and love him, that says something good. You know, quite often we do trials or we go to sentencing and there's no one here on the behalf of a defendant, which is really tragic and sad. So it says something good that a family does still care about him. I have reviewed the pre-sentence, and I've taken into consideration what's stated therein. I have to look at whether you're remorseful, and I don't think you're remorseful in any way. I don't think that you have gotten to the point of taking any form of responsibility for what transpired. You know, the investigation that was conducted in this case, it was a dedication by numerous law enforcement officers to work tirelessly to put together the pieces to determine exactly what happened underlying this matter. You know, I do think that jury trials, they do re-victimize the victims. You know, it's hard to sit and watch a trial. It's hard to see the details, and it's hard, you know, not even to have known Miss Robinson, to wipe from my mind what you saw during that trial. And I didn't love her. I didn't know her, but you did. And that's a hard last thing to have in your minds. So I do understand how trials do re-victimize the victims. So when I look at the character of the defendant, I find the character wanting. When I look to the severity of the offense underlying this matter, I I do sit in homicide court. And I can tell you on a daily basis, you don't understand why things happen. You know, almost every case, the victims come in and they want to know why. Why did it happen? Why did you have to do this? Why did you have to get to that point? And more often than not, there's no answer. We never know. It never makes sense. There's never do you walk away and say, oh, I understand why that transpired. It just doesn't happen. I can also tell you that, you know, I've read through all these letters and they talk about give us justice, right? Give us what's due. But I can't give you justice. There's no way you will walk out of here, no matter what I do today, and high-five each other. There's no way you walk out of here and you say, justice is served. Because justice would be having Ms. Robinson back to you. Justice would be having her with you for the rest of your lives. And you never get that. You know, to hear about her, she was an innocent victim. You know, she was a girl that I would hope all young ladies strive to be. You know, to hear about working 2 jobs to reach her goals, to be going on for schooling and further education, but then to hear about how much she was loved in the community by almost everyone that touched her. You know, it was interesting to go through the letters because I got the letters that were from who I expected, you know, the mother, the father, the sister, the loved ones. I also got a letter from the real estate agent that worked with Ms. Scarborough. I got a letter from citizens. And I can't tell you, I really debated whether or not I would share this, but there was a letter from a citizen that doesn't know Ms. Robinson, never met her. And this is what he said, or she said, I don't know. The person signed it as Stargazer. In pertinent part, it says, Sade Robinson was not a torso. She was not evidence. She was a full, living, radiant human being. She had dreams, plans, and a future she was building with pride. She had people who loved her and that still love her, more than words can hold. And she had a right to live, to breathe, to laugh, to grow old. That right was stolen in a way so vile, so deliberate, that it tears at the fabric of what we call humanity. You, Maxwell Anderson, didn't just kill her. You carved her, and you discarded her like garbage, and you tried to erase her body from this earth piece by piece. And for what? Not even you had the courage to say. You sat there in court as if you were a man. You didn't snap, you planned. You didn't panic, you dismembered. And still you offer no answers, no remorse, no ounce of dignity that you stripped from her. But here's what you couldn't take. You could not mutilate her soul. You could not silence the scream of justice. You could not prevent an entire community from rising up in Sade's name. We know who she was. We know what she could have become, and we will not let your darkness define her. To the family, there are no words that can hold the weight of your pain, but I need you to know we see you. We mourn with you. We love you. You have the right to tears. You have the right to rage. You have the right to every ounce of justice this system can give. May you feel her arms in the wind. May you hear her laughter in your memories. May you know that she did not die forgotten, she died loved, and we will remember her always. Maxwell Anderson, you are not the center of this story. She is, and she will always be. Sade Robinson lives on in light, in truth, and in love, and you will be remembered only as a man who tried to destroy something beautiful, but failed. You know, I thought that was beautiful, and I think that it shows the impact that this had on the community. You know, that took time and effort and thought, and I think it put together a lot of what the community felt. So going back to what I need to look at. In formulating a proper sentence, I need to look at the character of the defendant. I need to look at the severity of the offense. You know, to take away a child is horrific. You know, you wouldn't wish that on anybody. To have a child not outlive the parents is a horrible thing. But not only did you extinguish her life, but you hid it, and you hid her body to be found. And I can only imagine every time a news report, every time something clicked that another body part was found, how it had to just re-victimize this family, how it had to just be like another shot to their soul. I can't imagine how horrific that had to be. And yet, I wonder which was worse, the not knowing in those first days where she was, you know. I can't even think of a word, horrific. It's beyond imaginable for a parent to think of not being able to know if your children are dead or alive, and then to learn that they were dismembered and disgraced to the extent that this poor girl, her body endured, is beyond understanding. So the severity of the offense, I'll agree. It's definitely at the top of some of the worst homicides I've seen in this court. Looking at the impact on the community, I read that letter because I thought it stated to a great extent what we're here about. You know, what my job is to do, it is to hold you accountable and to punish you. It is also to protect society. And that's about how do we figure out if at some point you're redeemable? How do we figure out if at some point you will change your mindset? You will get the therapy and education to be at a point where you will be safe to have in the community. Now, part of that goes into the fact that you don't take responsibility. You know, I listened to the evidence. I watched what was introduced during the course of the trial. There is no explanation that I've heard that's valid as to why you would be walking away from that burning car. You know, those photos were not of a girl in a video enjoying life. Those photos of you grasping the breast that was ultimately shaved from her body, with her face plastered into that, I don't recall if it was the ottoman at the couch, the way that her body was positioned, there's no explanation for that. I don't need to rehash the evidence. I've gone through all my notes from this trial, and I think that Attorney Vance Cruzan did a nice job of summarizing and in part the details. But there's no answer that you briefly provided in this pre-sentence that makes even a hint, that even resonates with a hint of truth. So how do we protect society from a man who clearly has had darkness in his past, who engaged in behavior that is, it's the facts that you see written in horror novels. That's what we have to determine. And you know, it isn't easy. I can tell you that when you think about, is there ever something redeemable in a person? You'd like to say at some point there is. And I can tell you that at the points in life where I've come to the conclusion that there isn't anything redeemable, you know, you do think about, I think it takes away a little piece of my soul. How come I couldn't find anything good? How come I can't find anything that I can say at some point you'll be a better person? So ultimately at sentencing, considering the seriousness of the offense, your character, and the needs of society. This is clearly not a probation case. Probation would unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense and isn't even allowable under our law. You are sentenced to a term of life imprisonment, and that is what the penalty is for a jury of your peers ultimately coming back and convicting you on first-degree intentional. In this case, I didn't see a restitution request.
We are asking for a restitution hearing, and we've pre-selected a date.
Thank you. We'll be setting restitution off to be determined at a later date. Relative to This matter, I have considered the seriousness of the offense. I have weighed your character, and as I've indicated, I find it wanting. I've also reflected on the needs of society, and are you a good risk? And sadly, you're not. As to my sentence, relative to the nature of the offense, you are not eligible for challenge incarceration. You're clearly not eligible for any substance abuse programming. Restitution will be determined at a later date. You do need to submit a biological specimen to the state crime lab and pay the surcharge thereof. You do have the right to appeal, and if indigent, you have the right to the assistance of the public defender. What you need to understand is that a notice of intent to pursue post-conviction relief must be filed in the trial court within 20 days after sentencing for your rights to be preserved. You have been convicted of a felony. You may never possess a firearm. If you do, you're looking at 10 years of imprisonment, a $25,000 fine, or both. You may not possess body armor at any time in the future. If you do, you'll be subject to 15 years of imprisonment, a $50,000 fine, or both. You cannot vote in any election. I'm going to waive all non-mandatory fees, costs, and assessments. I'm ultimately going to want payment for restitution first and foremost. So we're going to determine that on a later date. But due to that, I'm not imposing any fine. The fees, costs, and assessments will be payable during your term of confinement at a rate to be determined by the DOC. Pretrial incarceration credit.
I'll get that information to you.
Okay. So relative to one moment. Count 3, arson of property other than building. That's a Class I felony. On that offense, you are looking at a fine of up to $10,000 or imprisonment for not more than 3 years and 6 months, or both. Relative to that matter, the maximum is 18 months of initial confinement and 2 years of extended supervision. I am imposing 18 months of initial confinement and 2 years of extended supervision. One moment. As to count 2, which is a charge of mutilating a corpse, that's a Class F felony. That means upon conviction, you could be fined not more than $25,000 and imprisoned not more than 12 years and 6 months, or both. Relative to that, the maximum is 7.5 years of initial confinement and 5 years of extended supervision. I am imposing 7.5 years of initial confinement and 5 years of supervision. Relative to count 1, that is a Class A felony, the charge of first-degree intentional homicide. Relative to that, you shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life. And relative to this matter, weighing all of the factors that I must, looking at the Galleon factors, considering your character, the severity of the offense, and the impact on the community, where you stole a truly shining light, is what it sounds like. I am ordering that you will not be eligible for extended supervision. Counts 2 and 3 are consecutive to count 1. The date for the restitution hearing will be
September 4th at 10:30.
Have you determined?
Yes, excluding today's date, 484 days.
I will provide you with a written explanation of the determinate sentence for your review. State, what have I failed to address?
I think that's everything.
Defense, what have I failed to address?
Nothing further.
Celeste?
Nothing, Judge.
One moment, and I'll give you a copy.
right, so that is it. I followed this case on through, and I am so glad that this is the justice that Sade Robinson and her family receives. It is just sickening how this man still hasn't taken responsibility for what he has done. He still is holding this young lady's head away from her family. I mean, it's just horrible. It's just horrible. And like I said to her earlier, Sheena, I hope you and your family can somehow manage to continue with life and not have this entity, this feeling just stuck within you. It's not something you can ever get over, but hopefully you can move forward, and I wish you and your family better things. A tragic situation, and I am so sorry that this has happened to Sade. I really am. Justice for Sade Robinson.